A curse is a simple but very complex thing. Cursed spirits are a race of spiritual beings manifested from cursed energy as a result of negative emotions that fall and flow out of us human beings. In my world, there were spirits, cursed spirits that I hunted, I went after, killed, defeated, exorcised. Many and many more. My name is Naofumi Iwatani, and in my universe, I used cursed energy to slay these monsters, to slay these spirits as a sorcerer. But what I would have known and what I wouldn't have expected is to be sent somewhere else. Sent somewhere far different than I would have imagined. Far different than the world that I was protecting initially. Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy Golden Falls, Golden What If, whatever you want to call me, and I'm back with a brand new Naofumi or Shield Hero What If Naofumi was the legendary curse hero. I just recently watched JJK or Jujutsu Kaisen, and it was definitely amazing. I've been getting suggestions to watch it for a long time. Finally had some extra time to watch it, so I did. I watched it, thought it was great. So bear with me if I get some things wrong. This was a first time around watch, and I still need to do some reading and do some research on it, of course, because obviously nothing's perfected and nothing's perfect. But I'm here with a brand new Naofumi What If, and I'm not going to waste any more of your time, and let's get right into what if Naofumi was the legendary curse hero. Let's get it. Naofumi Iwatani was born in a world that was filled with cursed spirits, filled with this race of spiritual beings that was manifested from cursed energy and was a result of negative emotions that would flow out of a human being. But luckily, these jujutsu sorcerers were here to defend against these monsters, you could say. These cursed spirits, they were luckily able to defend against them, and one of these people goes by the name of Naofumi Iwatani, a strong jujutsu sorcerer, and frankly one of his kind. One that goes based off his brawn, his strength, but also has technique, flawless technique to go along with it. But what he didn't know was that he was soon going to be sent somewhere else, soon going to be sent to a place that was very unknown to him, and all of his techniques, or at least most of them, would be gone in the wind immediately. Naofumi had a skill set that was monstrous in terms of destroying and exorcising cursed spirits. But how would it work against the monsters of this world he would be sent to? One night he was reading up on some jujutsu sorcery, reading up on anything he wanted to learn. He began getting very interested in the clans that were around him, more interested than he has ever before. Beforehand, he used to not really care very much. He used to go around, do whatever he wanted, and frankly, he didn't care about these clan settlements and what they even had to do with it. Frankly, he was strong enough to not be in a clan and be far surpassed all of their profits of their clans, but he didn't care, not one bit. But now he's curious to see with more and more people, more and more jujutsu sorcerers strong coming out of these clans. He's curious about the backstory of them. He begins flipping over this page about some of the clans, but it seems like the pages are empty. He's confused by this. Why would the pages be empty? That doesn't even make sense. And he continues to flip more and more until he sees the start of a new book, a brand new one called The Four Cardinal Heroes. And in all the fun games he's played and all of the cool things he's seen, this is definitely something different. The Four Cardinal Heroes, that sounds like a bunch of malarkey, a bunch of baloney, a bunch of BS. He begins reading, seeing that there's a sword, a spear, a bow, but the other one is blank. It seems like the picture of the fourth hero is even gone, But as this is recognized, Naofumi immediately disappears into this blinding light. And when he awakens and his eyes open, he sees 3 other people next to him. But not only that, he's in some sort of cage. He's not sure what it is, but he stands up immediately. And he begins questioning them about what's going on and what are they doing. And the knights explain that they are here to save this world. With some introductions ahead and frankly some quickness in their voice, they're all sent to the king, and the king begins to observe them for a second, realizing who they were and who they are. But the problem is there's no shield hero, or to the king, this is actually good. There's the spear, the bow, the sword, but then they have this guy. Who is he? Maybe he was brought here on accident, and they even question him, asking where is he from and what is he even doing here. He says that he was teleported here, but he's not going to tell them where he's from. That's going to just put them in danger, or put his own world in danger. If this is a new place in this entire universe of things, he's not going to just tell them information. The king just nods and agrees with the aspect of that, but there's not much else to be said here. There's no weapon that Naofumi has. There's nothing that he can really do currently, and he can even feel that his powers are very, very suppressed. It seems like all the cursed energy he had back in his other world is now practically gone. Only remnants are here, but there's other aspects in this world. It doesn't feel like this world even has necessarily cursed energy and curses. There's no monsters per se, but that's not the problem. There's monsters in a different way. But maybe that's his power. Maybe that's the hero he is. Maybe he'll slowly but surely regain the power he has in his other world, and maybe even elaborate on it. Maybe grow the power. He's not so sure. But all 4 of them are sent off immediately to basically get everything settled and go to sleep in this hotel room. But before they call it a night, they begin exchanging information, but even Naofumi is not so sure if he should be exchanging this information with these people. But he feels like there's no really harm or foul, so he'll keep the information to a minimum, explaining exactly where he's come from, and that there's all this video game stuff he's not really fond over, and he doesn't know much about it. So they explain to him like this minor rundown of all of it, and that was really about it for the night. They head to sleep, and the next morning they meet up at the kingdom once again. The king explains that there's all of these people that want to join their parties, so he picked the best of the best, and they're going to choose for themselves who they want to join. And when all of them begin to choose, well, it seems that Naofumi doesn't have anybody. It seems like everybody heard that he doesn't know anything about this world, and, you know, they decide that they don't want anything to do with him. But Naofumi doesn't really care. He kind of works on his own anyways, and every so often he'll work with someone else, but it's not like anybody's going to fit his ideals, not even close. So he walks away, and the king stops him, saying that they'll give him some money before he goes, and he accepts the money, which is about 1,500 silver, and he leaves. He arrives at this blacksmith, or maybe even a weaponsmith, and he greets the blacksmith. And they introduce each other, or introduce themselves to each other, the blacksmith by the name of Erhard and Naofumi.
You look like a man of culture, so I'm glad I'm speaking with you. Could you hook a brother up with some gear that would benefit me in this journey?
Erhard responds that of course he can, but everything's for a price, but since he's a hero, it's a discounted one. He thanks him, and they exchange basically the money for some decent armor, and Naofumi is able to have some decent stat buffs, but what he's really concerned about is getting his powers back. He tries his best to look through this gaming-like menu, but he doesn't really understand it too much. He kind of has to learn as he goes here, but he does figure it out a bit. learning that he has some powers already built in, and it seems like the gem on his neck that he has is actually the reason for all of this gaming information that he doesn't necessarily understand. And it's actually the source of the power. He finds this very intriguing and begins to go out and try to train and level up, finding that the brute strength that he had initially is still blatantly there, and frankly, that doesn't really matter. And he is a master at hand-to-hand combat off of all the training he's been through. The only thing that he really lacks is some other things. His cursed energy seems to be at an all-time low, and it seems he can't use any of his abilities. But he begins to research through all of his things and all of his gaming, you could say, attributes. And when he looks through all of them, he sees that there is a lack of abilities that he has. It seems like his abilities are all base set, but not only that, there's tons of more abilities that he could have. Maybe this video game like world gives him an option to even increase even more of his, you could say, repertoire, but he's not so sure about it. He has to really see in the near future, but he hopes to at least get back to the abilities that he already knew in his other world, in which he tries to use them but obviously can't. They just don't work. So he begins to think that there has to be a way for him to necessarily get back his cursed energy. So he quickly smashes through the small little balloon animals, quickly smashes through most of the things that are in the starting area, you could say, and he destroys most of the things that are there. His hand-to-hand combat skills are actually pretty impressive, and he's just, in terms of brute strength, he's extremely strong. But something does come to mind. Maybe he could get a weapon. Maybe a weapon that he could use for now. Maybe a nice little bow staff or some nunchucks or something. So he goes to see and talk to Erhard, but when he picks it up, it does seem to electrocute him. But it does make him curious. Maybe if he gets back his curse powers, maybe there's some way he can inject these weapons with curse energy? Maybe. He's not so sure about it, but it could be something that he has to think about in the future. And he does think maybe if he adds someone else to his party that has cursed energy within them, maybe based on emotions, maybe that would actually benefit him as well. But frankly, these are all guesses and he's not so sure about it. So he begins to head back to his hotel room, but then he's stopped by 3 bandits. Bandits that say that they want all his money or else, but he quickly knocks them out. It's not even a fair fight. Frankly, the bandits are so outclassed that it's not even funny. But even with all that done or said and done, someone approaches him. And they say that if he's interested in some party members, that maybe they should or he should follow him.
You know, you're pretty short. I'm not sure if I should trust you, to be honest.
And the slave market owner says that it's really not a problem and that he should just follow him to see what he has in store. So he does just that. But the problem is, well, Naofumi is not totally up for this whole slavery idea. But he does see some interesting monsters that are probably extremely strong. But he thinks about it. Maybe someone with cursed energy. He does feel around. He can sense cursed energy, of course. But he thinks maybe somebody that has struggled, has hurt themselves, that made themselves, well, to the point where they're sickening of themselves or maybe sickening of other people. Maybe that would be beneficial, at least for him. He begins looking around, not for monsters, but for humanoid-like creatures, seeing a little girl with little raccoon ears and a raccoon tail, seeing her and pointing her out and saying that he wants to buy her. And frankly, the slave market owner is questioning why he would want that, but he says that he wants her and the woman over there, or the teenager, he's not so sure. But she does look like an elf, and frankly, those two were most likely ridiculed. He doesn't say this to the market owner, but it might benefit him as well. He pays for both of them, and he says that he'll put a slave crest on them, but he says that's fine. If they want to run away, that's their choice, but he is going to put them in his party for now. He takes them away, gets them fed, and honestly cures any sickness that they possibly could have in terms of buying medicine and stuff like that. And it seems like everything is okay. He then sits them both down and introduces himself as Naofumi Iwatani, one of the heroes. And frankly, he believes himself to be one of the heroes that weren't supposed to be summoned. But at least that's what it feels like. But even with that said though, he's still here to help, and if they so choose to help him, they can as well. He opens the door to his motel room and says that they can leave whenever they want. If they want to leave now, feel free. And he leaves it open, but neither of them move. Raftalia introduces herself. The little raccoon girl speaks up first, and then the other elf woman begins to speak as well, saying that her name is Hina. She explains that she was imprisoned and sold off just like Raftalia most likely, and she used to be a fighter, but frankly ever since she got captured she kinda gave up the will to fight. Raftalia responds that she was never a fighter in the first place and that her parents, well, unfortunately died in the last wave. And, well, Naofumi says that they're here to fight, and that if they don't want to fight, they don't have to fight, that they can always leave, and maybe they can sort out some arrangements. But they both shake their heads, saying that they do owe him some sort of debt, but he explains that they truly don't. There's no slave crest on them, and they owe no debt. But they refuse to hear what he's saying that they do owe him a debt to a certain extent, that he got them free, and frankly, being one of the heroes, they have to help him in some sort of way. So he accepts this and says that he's gonna get them both armored up and ready to go, and they'll start leveling up immediately. So after the night, they head to Erhard, and Raftalia gets a nice little short sword with some decent armor, and the elf girl by the name of Hina gets a bow, an arrow, and some other armor as well. And Naofumi questions if that's the best idea. Is a bow really the best? And she explains that that's what she used when she used to fight, that a bow and arrow is just as effective as a sword if used properly. And Naofumi smiles hearing this and can sense something within both of them, and actually can see that his curse energy has increased. It seems like the stats or the statistical output on his game stat sheets went up in terms of the curse energy, and his hypothesis was correct. It seems like, well, with Raftalia having such a bad past, and also Hina having such a terrible past, it seems like you could say that the curse energy was able to skyrocket in such a short amount of time. This is a good thing for Naofumi. He hasn't really gotten much of his powers back, but this does mean that he could gain curse energy by developing these two, but also developing himself. And maybe they can even power themselves up using curse energy if taught properly. But that's a whole nother ballgame. That might not even be at least possible for the time being. But this is something Naofumi wants to try. Now that they begin their training and their leveling up spree, it seems that there's good amounts of XP to be gained, especially in the forest that he basically cleared out the other day. But he does go back to Erhard before anything else and asks about two things: about touching another bow staff, a weapon that he tried to pick up earlier, and also where they could make some money. He is running out pretty quickly with all the expenses he's been going through, and Erhard kind of laughs at this and says that that's what happens when you add 2 more party members. So he hands over the bow staff for him to grab again, and when he grabs it, it actually doesn't electrify him. It seems he was able to endow it with some curse energy, especially with his excess curse energy, at least at the moment, and it seems like he's able to use it. And this is a little different though. The bow staff will be able to increase with his levels, and the more curse energy he gets, the stronger the bow staff's gonna get as well. So it's like a multiplier on top of his already multiplier using curse energy. This will be very beneficial. He asks how much would it cost, and he says that it's free. It's just a bow staff. And frankly, if he can make some really good use out of a bow staff, he deserves to have it for free. And he thanks Erhard and then says that he'll tip him for the information he gives next, about a place by the name of Loot Village. Luckily, he's able to give some information about a place that they can go, and they end up heading over there, and he drops them some silver coins. When they arrive at Loot Village, they begin trying to trade some things, but eventually they ask if there's any place to make a lot of money in a quick amount of time, and they say that there is a mine over there, but the only thing about the mine is that there are tons of monsters from the wave, in which Naofumi isn't really too worried about. Raphtalia is a bit, and Hina likes the idea of training in that place. But when they arrive, they begin mining, and they sense something. Actually, all three of them sense something, and this does bring to attention that they actually have cursed energy, and they're using it without actually knowing. They look up to see a two-headed dog. The two-headed dog has this anger with him, so he does have minor amounts of cursed energy, but it seems like it's not like a curse. Luckily enough, because frankly, Naofumi doesn't know if he can handle curses, even lower tier ones right now, especially when he doesn't have his full strength, and nowhere near it, frankly. But even with that said, they begin fighting this dog, and Raphtalia seems to be scared out of her mind. And Naofumi realizes something, that this is a battle. If Raphtalia can beat this wolf or this dog-like creature, maybe she can get over this fear. She can get over this trauma, or at least try to get over it. So it eventually leads to Raphtalia stabbing the dog in the chest and breaking free of her own mental curse, at least for now. Naofumi walks over to it though, at least the two-headed dog, and some weird spirit begins to get sucked into the orb or the gem on his neck. His curse energy has just risen once again, and he realizes something. Maybe these more powerful monsters that have drastic emotions or cause other people drastic emotions will give him more cursed energy. This is definitely something to keep into account, because if there is a wave that comes or tons of monsters that come, and well, you could say scares a bunch of people, if they kill all the monsters, maybe their cursed energy can increase, especially Naofumi's. He still hasn't gained one of his abilities, so that's what he wants to do first. He definitely wants to gain an ability back, at least something basic. And he would get this chance very, very soon. After a month of leveling up, preparations for the wave, and various other things, Naofumi has gained some decent amount of levels, strength, and all of that, but nothing has necessarily come back, except for something very simple, which is basically just curse energy around him, as if it was like some aura, giving him some more defensive capabilities and upping his defense by a good little bit. Luckily, he's able to do at least this, and this will help him in the near future. But with all that said, Raphtalia, Hina, and Naofumi head over to the Dragon Hourglass to see how long it will be until the next wave. When they arrive, they actually meet the other three heroes, in which they actually don't really have a problem with Naofumi. They just don't know if he's really that strong, and they question if he's not going to be a hindrance on this wave, and the other two next to him, Raphtalia and Hina, say that is far from the truth. Motoyasu tries to walk up to them and basically flirt his way in, but they both just put their hands in front of his face, saying that they want nothing to do with him, that he is definitely not their type. And Naofumi hears this and begins to shed a tear, and he just shakes his head.
I'm so proud of you both.
With all that said, they realize that the wave is going to happen the next day, so they leave to finish up any preparations they need to do before it. But that said, the wave then begins. While the other heroes and their allies rush to defeat the main monster, Naofumi, Raphtalia, and Hina realize something. The people of Loot have not evacuated yet, and there is a flare going up in the air. So Naofumi drops everything and runs over with Hina and Raphtalia to defend the village, and everybody is screaming in terror trying to get away. And out of nowhere, this hulking person, Naofumi, jumps from a roof and slams into 4 to 5 of these skeleton-like monsters and begins to pile drive these hornets. Every single monster around, Naofumi is running around protecting anybody he can, and Raphtalia is doing the same, running around slicing and dicing as many monsters as possible, and Hina is shooting everything and protecting anyone she can from afar. And this is definitely going to be beneficial, and is going to be able to get the people of Loot out of there. There's one problem though. There is a lot of monsters coming in and out. Frankly, they seem endless. And Naofumi recognizes this, that unless the main source is stopped, it's not going to stop going. But luckily, Raphtalia and Hina say that to not worry about it, that hopefully the other heroes can handle it, and they realize what they just said. They definitely aren't going to handle it as quick as they think they are, huh? And Naofumi shakes his head, and they say that they can handle this. They'll help the evacuation, and Hina can keep everything at bay for now as they evacuate out. But the other people of Loot say not to worry. They have their pitchforks, swords, and anything they can scourge up, and Naofumi says that they shouldn't even be here anymore, but they say that they're gonna go down fighting as well. And with the help of Raphtalia and Hina, they have a chance. They can defeat all these monsters while Naofumi goes over to obliterate the monster over there. He nods and he begins to jump away, running at insane speeds, and jumps above, seeing this chimera. He jumps on the chimera's back and does a complete suplex on it, slamming it into the ground, and begins pile driving it, punching it, grabbing his bow staff from the back of his holster and slamming the bow staff into it, just obliterating the chimera. And the other three heroes say that he just took the defeat. He kills the chimera and says that they were taking too long, that the people over there in the other village were under siege and they were in trouble, that there was no reason to play around with their food. The wave is now over, and a soul from the chimera basically endows into the gem that Naofumi has, and tons of more souls begin to do the same from the village of Loot. All the souls begin to rush in, basically from all the fear that they initially felt, and all the slain monsters that Raphtalia, Hina, and Naofumi have already defeated. And honestly, the other heroes are baffled to see this. All of these souls, or whatever this ghost-looking creatures are, rushing into the gem of Naofumi, saying that he has to basically spoil what he's doing. But he says that he doesn't even really understand it, at least not to a certain extent. And he just heads off, saying that they probably can't even do that themselves anyways. It's probably just him. But Naofumi knows exactly what's happening. He's already come to that conclusion, but he's not going to tell them just for nothing, especially with the way they're acting. They're acting like children. This is life or death, and he truly believes that, and he doesn't like that they're acting in such a way. But now it's over. Everybody in the village thanks Naofumi, thanks Raphtalia, thanks Hina for all the help, and now the dragon hourglass resets, and the countdown starts once again. After repelling the wave of catastrophe though, all the heroes are treated to a state dinner. Luckily, Naofumi actually does attend this. He loves to eat, loves food, and he's hungry. So him and his party head over and begin eating until something kind of goes affray. Mine walks up to Motoyasu, and he can just feel the bad intent from Mine. Motoyasu is pissed to hear this, and whatever she said must have been some sort of lie. Hearing that Raphtalia and Hina are both slaves, but they say they don't even have a slave crest, that they're not slaves. And actually, it's the opposite, that they were bought from slavery, and he purposely did not get a slave crest and said that they could leave at any time. And Mine interjects, saying that there's no way that's the truth. Just look at him. He's obviously forcing them to stay with him. But Naofumi is confused at this. How would anybody even believe that? Just because of the way he looks? Because he's bigger, stronger, whatever? Naofumi then begins to speak.
Listen. I'll be honest. You're not my type of woman. Frankly, I wouldn't even touch you with a 10-foot pole. But that's beyond the point. I did not enslave these people. They're here to help me. Do you not understand that?
And Mine is pissed to hear this. Someone just insulted the way she looks so casually. Motoyasu is pissed as well, especially being wrapped around her finger the way he is, and says that he challenges him to a duel.
You don't want to do a duel with me. I honestly don't know why you would even choose this course of action. This is a horrible course of action. You're going to be out for days. You're going to be hurting. There's no reason. Do you really want to do this?
Motoyasu tells him to stop mocking him and stop messing around, and he shakes his head.
I knew you wouldn't be the type for the girls I have over here. It just doesn't make sense. Look at you. Ah, so scrawny.
So, the fight then begins. The lullaby at dawn in front of everybody begins, and the fight rages on, and frankly, it's pretty one-sided. Naofumi has a weapon himself, a bow staff that has actually elevated in power over the last month or so, and it's pretty darn strong. And Naofumi, on top of that, has this cursed energy aura that he can use to basically block attacks that the spear is going to try and hit him with. Everything is going to go in the way of Naofumi. On top of this, Naofumi has gotten proper leveling up. He can level up himself. So the fact that this is even a close fight would be outlandish. So Naofumi proceeds to beat him down, and beat him down badly. Every strike with the spear is parried. Every try to hit him in crucial points is parried. Anything that happens, it's parried. And frankly, even when Mine tries to cheat, Naofumi can sense the ill intent and dodges it. And he proceeds to beat Amaterasu until the fight is over. And even the other heroes tell Mine that luckily Naofumi is extremely strong, because that would have been illegal and that would have been cheating. And they scorn Mine for this, telling her to never do something like that again, especially if you want to call it the sacred duel. So Naofumi and his party are able to leave, luckily, and he doesn't even accept the money from the king, saying that he'll deal with it on his own, because he learns that Mine is actually the daughter of the king. He's not too fond of this royalty aspect. He has nothing necessarily against the king on his own, but the fact that that is his daughter is going to say something about him. This is not good. It seems like the kingdom is practically against him, maybe because he's different, maybe because he's not the hero they were expecting, maybe they didn't want to summon him at all. But that doesn't really matter to Naofumi. He has a job to do, and he wants to slay these waves, gain his power back, and hopefully go back to his own world. But before they actually do anything else, Naofumi decides that he's going to maybe get something for the two of them. Maybe they need a monster for themselves. It would actually be pretty beneficial. They go to the slave market trader, and it seems like they have these gacha eggs. So Naofumi buys one and also gets a slave crest on it. They ask why he did, and he says that frankly it is a monster, so it would be slightly harder to control without the slave crest, but if the monster becomes tame enough, he'll get rid of the slave crest. How about that? And Rautalia says that she didn't really have a problem with it in the first place, and Hina says the same thing, but that is a good idea. Maybe giving it a choice once it gets, well, more tame and trained would be a good idea. And he agrees. So they head off with the egg, and soon after, when they're in Loot Village, it actually hatches, reaching adulthood in only a few days. He's not sure how that would work, but he does learn that maybe it has something to do with his curse energy, his energy in general, or maybe just being one of the heroes. But this is kind of legit. He has a fully grown Philolial in a matter of days, and this would come in handy when they visit Loot Village, or when they're at Loot Village, because someone comes over to declare that it's their village. Motoyasu and Mine declare that it's under Moteyasu's royal rule, or rule by royal decree. And Naofumi says that that's just not the case. You can't just do that. There's too many money limitations, and it's ridiculous. And the other people of Loot Village agree, saying that this is absolutely ridiculous, and Mine says that how could you even say such a thing, and that you can't reject a royal decree. Yeah, that's until someone appears in front of her, handing her a piece of paper, and this gets her mad for some reason. They're not sure what the paper says, but she says that if Naofumi wants to save this place, then let's do it in a race. That kind of rhymed, not gonna lie. I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. Okay, sorry. But with all that said, their race begins. It's very similar to normal. It's a Philolial versus this dragon-like creature that can be ridden, and obviously Mine's gonna cheat. She cheats a lot, but the raw strength, and frankly the raw strength that the Philolial or Philo's going to have because of this curse energy within their team and like all of the stuff that's going on, it's not even going to be really close. He wins about a lap ahead, but there's something else that he actually learns, that he can actually put curse energy within Philo. It's kind of odd, actually. He was thinking that he can obviously infuse curse energy within weapons. He was able to do that in his other world, and luckily it was something that he had off the bat. But could he put cursed energy within a monster? He doesn't see Philo necessarily as a monster, but technically she is his slave, quote unquote, at least slave part of the party. So maybe it is Philo is technically an item or a weapon. So he tries, and it does work. It boosts Philo's power by a great deal, and it actually levels her up a good amount too. But he doesn't want to put too much curse energy. He isn't sure if she can actually handle it. But right after he does this, unbeknownst to him that this was going to happen already, she grows in size to a giant Philolial, and he is confused. Did he just overload her with curse energy?
Did I just make you fat?
And well, Philo kind of just laughs this off, and he hugs Philo and apologizes and starts crying.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to.
But Philo already knows what's happening. Frankly, this is kind of was expected, at least she could tell in terms of her body. But with all that said and done, Mind tries to say that he cheated and blah blah blah, but the shadows obviously say otherwise, and they're allowed to leave, and Mind and Matsuyasu don't get their way. But this grudge against Naofumi, for blatantly no reason, will continue on. And it's going to be blatantly obvious, especially because Mind wants to get what she wants, but Naofumi isn't going to let that happen. But with their new comrade, with Philo the Philolial, and honestly, he gains a little, you could call a wagon or a cart from the loot village, because they don't really have much there to give him. They head off. And during one of their stops, they head to sleep and relax. But when they wake up, they see Philo transformed into a little girl with wings. And well, Naofumi begins to freak out.
How did you do that? That doesn't even make sense.
And she just turns and calls him Master Naofumi and asks what's going on. And he's bugging out. He's tripping off everything and thinks that he's still dreaming. And Raftalia and Hina ask what is he doing, and he says that he's not doing anything, that he doesn't know what happened. And basically Philo explains that, well, she is Philo, and that does bring a interesting dynamic. Naofumi brings Philo to Earhart in hopes to get her a dress or something that would change when she transforms, and that eventually sends them to the dressmaker, and obviously sends them to the magic shop owner, in which they have to get Philo magic clothes, but they lack a new magic gemstone for her loom. So they have to head over to get magical thread or the magical gemstone for that thread. While escorting, though, a wealthy trader who basically just wants to have a free ride, frankly. And Naofumi doesn't see a problem with this. He doesn't really care. It's not like Philo cares. So he takes them, but a group of bandits attack their wagon, in which they're able to defeat pretty quickly. Naofumi actually just the presence of Naofumi kind of scares them, seeing that he's actually a pretty big dude, and on top of that, they know what he is capable of. They basically start gloating, saying that, oh, they're gonna say all this stuff about Naofumi, defaming his name, and that they're gonna extort him. And yeah, Naofumi doesn't take this lightly. He punches them all in the face and says that he's going to continue to beat them down and maybe even feed them to Philo.
Philo, you hungry?
And Philo says that she would love to eat some heads off of them, and they begin to just give them all their stuff. They're terrified of Naofumi, and well, Naofumi takes the trader all the way to their destination, in which he offers to teach Naofumi new skills, new contacts, and everything like that, and even gaining a warrant for the mine quarry at a discount. And Naofumi's gotten some good information, and frankly, this was a good thing to get. Information is always powerful. But with all that said, Naofumi's party heads in with the magic shop owner to find the magic gemstone. But before they can find that, they do find something else. Some odd alchemist tomb housing this cursed seed, and Naofumi is very uneasy about it. Cursed? That's not good. That is not good. But maybe it's not the curse that he thinks. At least hopefully not. But the seed's missing. That's why he's so worried, but he can't really worry about that now. After fighting the creatures through the tunnels that were basically making them hear stupid things, and Naofumi just didn't believe it at all, they locate the gem vein, in which Anu, something very similar to the Chimera, is protecting it, and Naofumi says that they can handle that. And they ask why doesn't he just kill it, and he says that he can probably one-shot it, that it'll be good training for them, frankly. So they all agree and they all attack it, with obviously Hina in the background sniping and shooting her arrows, Raftalia stabbing into it like it's nothing, and Philo helping out the best she possibly can by kicking it into the ground. And frankly, they're a lot stronger than they would ever have been in the normal universe of Shield Hero. They're a lot stronger. So this fight is kind of a wash and gains them pretty decent XP, and Naofumi it seems like an acceleration in his cursed powers, which is good because right when that soul enters his gem on his neck, it seems like he got another one of his abilities back. He claps one time and switches places with Hina and is right in front of the Nu that they just killed. She's so confused. She doesn't even know what just happened, and he begins to look around and begin to basically just analyze anything the Nu has, at least on him, taking a gemstone and then leaving. She asks basically like what just happened, and he explains that one of his abilities has just come back, and it's called the Boogie Woogie. And they all three start laughing. Don't laugh at my ability. This ability is very strong. Trust me. Especially with all of us in sync, it could be very powerful. And they all say that it's just a funny name. Boogie Woogie, why would they call it that? And he just shrugs. I like the name, personally. They all then head off, leaving and eventually getting Philo her dress completely made, done with, and all of that. But before they actually can get that done fully, they have to do some drop off of merchandise and stuff like that, and which is pretty quick and easy, frankly, and it doesn't take much time at all until they have to go to deliver some herbicide. This was obviously after getting the dress done and made for Philo, but they deliver the herbicide to a village that is covered in these monstrous plants, and Naofumi just face palms, thinking that this is where the cursed seed came from, and whoever took that seed out of the tomb just messed up greatly. Naofumi begins speaking with the people of the village, and they explain that, well, the spear hero is the one that implanted that seed to end their local famine, but it sprouted and came alive and began attacking villager after villager, villager after villager. And now they're turning to Naofumi in hopes that he can defeat the monster, and he says he can. He says he'll figure it out, and they'll figure out a way to hopefully destroy it. So they eventually leave, and they head off to the main source of this monstrous plant, and when Naofumi arrives, he sees that it has grown extensively. This is probably not very good. Naofumi approaches the giant monster-like creature, or the giant plant, and begins hitting it, seeing that if he can do any damage, and he even places his hand on it to see if he can inflict curse energy within it, and see how much damage he can do in terms of that. But nothing really works, so he decides to try and cut it down to size. He begins to pulverize it the best he possibly can at full strength. He begins blow after blow, hitting every monster he possibly can see, and he begins to just obliterate it into the ground. But it seems that brute strength isn't going to do it, isn't going to cut it, so he tries something. He pours the herbicide over his bow staff and begins to invoke even more cursed energy within that bow staff. making it so that the herbicide injects itself within it and it begins to change.
You know, in my world, this would have definitely not have worked, but it was definitely optimistic, and luckily it kind of did work because I didn't have a backup plan.
Immediately, Naofumi goes charging at the plant once again, striking it with the bow staff, but this time every single hit degrades it more and more. The hits aren't even strong necessarily, it's just the fact that this herbicide is enhanced by the curse energy, and it seems like it's having a very effective amount of damage on this giant plant, eventually destroying it with the help of Raphtalia, Philo, and obviously Hina. With the help of them supporting him the best they possibly can, eventually they're able to annihilate it, exterminate it, and now the killer plant is no longer there, at least luckily. But they do have to explain to the villagers that they don't necessarily have any way of replanting a plant that, well, kind of turned and tried to kill them, and also they have no way of adjusting that seed. But he does have some leftover seeds, just regular seeds, that they can put in their soil and hopefully grows pretty well. They're just gonna have to nurture them extensively. And luckily they don't really complain at all. They say that it's completely fine. They understand that not everything can go their way, but luckily they can be saved in this instance by Naofumi. Naofumi says that it's truly no problem, and they immediately head off. They have another mission, and they've actually learned of a mysterious disease that is spreading through another village. When they actually go to check it out, they begin speaking with the villagers, seeing that they all are very, very sick. And luckily Naofumi has some minor cures for this in the meantime, but he says that he'll go clean up whatever disease this is being caused from, or where the disease is coming from. And they say that it has to do with this dragon on top of the mountain, that the sword hero Ren killed the dragon nearby but left the body to rot. And this kind of frustrates Naofumi, that this is not the way of handling themselves. This is absolutely ridiculous. So Naofumi and his party head up to basically the corpse and try to decompose the body in a less toxic area, and maybe cut it to shreds and help the village out. But once they set out to destroy this corpse, the zombie dragon resurrects, or the dragon resurrects into a zombie. And during this fight, it was intense. Blow after blow, Naofumi switches with his partners and his party by clapping. Clap, clap. One after another, they begin to confuse the dragon the best they possibly can, and Naofumi strikes it down with his bow staff the more and more he can. But he tries to clap one more time to save Philo, who dove straight in and right at the face of the dragon gets swallowed. And Naofumi tries to find a way to save her and decides that he's going to sacrifice himself. He claps, and now he's inside the dragon. Philo realizes what he just did, and she charges at the dragon's stomach, kicking it, and so does Raphtalia, and they think that it's over. Naofumi just got swallowed, and Philo is sad, is mad at herself for what she just did. She just killed her master. But as she thinks this, the body of the dragon begins to contort, begins to change, and black lightning begins to surge around the dragon, and all you can hear is one roar, one scream out of nowhere, and all you hear is Naofumi scream, "Black flash!" It obliterates the inside of the dragon, making an entire hole, and in turn defeating the dragon and making it blow its own head up. The dragon now dead, and Naofumi falls out with this odd gemstone of some sort, or a shard, in his hand, and it immediately gets sucked into his gem, and so does the soul of the dragon. He's confused to see this, and he's covered in this goop, and it's absolutely disgusting. And all three of them run and hug him, and he pats them all on the heads, saying that it's fine and that everything will be okay. But he's surprised that they want to hug him when he's all covered in this disgusting goo. And they say it's fine, they don't really care, they can always wash off. But with all that said and done, Naofumi sees that, well, they need some more training. They haven't been necessarily training very hard, especially haven't been leveling up very consistently, especially with everything going on. With the plant, with getting Philo's clothing, with now the dragon, yeah, the dragon gave them some XP, but they haven't gotten around to really leveling up, especially before this next wave. And he can see that his party's definitely falling behind him because he's gaining his abilities back. Whatever that dragon just did, when it swallowed Naofumi, it gave him another one of his abilities back instantaneously. It seems like the dragon has so much cursed energy, at least within him, and this sworn oath to have revenge on the sword hero, that it basically implanted Naofumi with accelerated amounts of leveling up, and he even gained extensive amounts of XP. And so did his bow staff, making him and the bow staff extremely strong, actually bridging closer to level 50 and 55 because of this. With his party bridging maybe closer to level 40, yes, that is a decently high level, but they were on pace to getting level 40 probably maybe a week ago. But unluckily, everything kind of flipped on its head. So he decides that they're going to start their leveling up process right when they get back. They'll start leveling up, training once again, and trying to get levels as soon as possible. And they should be able to get to at least to level 40 for their class upgrades pretty soon. And this would obviously happen relatively quickly just throughout their journey, getting them to level 40. But they are stopped in some aspect. Philolials are surrounding this little girl, and she seems to be really happy. This girl by the name of Melty makes friends with Philo, and Philo begs Naofumi that if they can take Melty and accompany her to the capital, because that's where she needs to go. And of course Naofumi says that's fine, he doesn't really care. And once they're there, Philo and Melty go away and basically just run around. And Naofumi and Raphtalia and also Hina plan to get some upgrades for their weaponry and stuff like that, in which they're able to do just that. And Erhard actually compliments Naofumi, saying that, well, it's pretty impressive that he can take a bow staff like that and make it as strong as he did. And it seems very, very unlikely that anybody else would have been able to do such a thing. He of course thanks Erhard for the compliment, but says to not give him too much credit, that it keeps him humble. He smiles and then heads off with Raphtalia and Hina, and they go meet up where Philo is once again. But Motoyasu, once again, on the instructions of mine, learns of Philo being a slave and dives in toward Naofumi immediately without any regard. But this time, well, Naofumi is not the one to protect him or himself. It's actually Raphtalia. She immediately jumps in front of Motoyasu, swiping the spear away and kicking him in the stomach. And obviously this reaction was not expected by Naofumi. Naofumi was ready to obviously knock him out quickly, but is pretty shocked to see that Raphtalia has gotten this strong, and it might have something to do with the cursed energy. Maybe she has cursed energy within her weapon, within herself? He's not so sure. It's a lot of confusing aspects to this world that he doesn't can fully wrap his head around just quite yet, but it must have something to do with the cursed energy that he holds within his entirety of his party. But Motoyasu tells her to step aside and tries to attack Naofumi once again, but Melty, someone that is of the royal family in which Naofumi had no idea about, tells them to stop, that the fighting is over now and that they need to quit entirely, especially while Motoyasu is ahead. And Naofumi is shocked to see this, and Melty explains that she is the heir apparent to the throne, that she will be the next queen, and that her older sister was supposed to be, but Malty's toxic personality prevents her from doing so. This actually does make Naofumi slightly chuckle and say that he can see that Melty is far more structured than her sister, and Naofumi says that she is far different than her sister, and luckily so, because Naofumi would have had nothing to do with her if she was very similar to her. But with all that said and done, Naofumi actually speaks with some people of Loot Village, and the people are actually some citizens that used to live there, and they're grateful for Naofumi and his party protecting them and protecting their hometown. And they say that they want to help protect as well, so Naofumi adds them to kind of his party, but more of like a side party in a way, in which they're not going to be part of his main, at least, group, and he gets them some weaponry, some decent things, and they're able to get ready for this next wave. But with the next wave really near, frankly about 24 hours from now, he actually needs to do some scouting for some towns, and Naofumi actually runs upon a starving refugee camp, and he begins questioning what happened, and they begin to say that they fled from a revolution that was started by Itsuki, and that more or less, once he started this revolution, it just put them back into famine again. But with all that said, Naofumi wants to help them the best he possibly can, so he gives them seeds and other things to restart their plants and obviously their food, but nothing is going to be instantaneous. Naofumi can't instantly grow anything and says that he apologizes that he can't make things better immediately, but hopefully this will help. The people there are grateful. They do not care about, that it won't take us, or it will take too long, or this or that. They don't care. As long as he's helping, that's what matters to them, and he's happy to hear it. And when he returns back once again, being that the wave is coming up very soon, Ren and Itsuki actually accuse him of stealing and taking payment of something that was quote-unquote rightfully theirs. But he says that's just not the case. That Itsuki made a revolution that only put a new government in that was just as corrupt as the one before. And Ren slayed a dragon but left its corpse, and left it to make a plague. And the two of them are baffled to hear this, and Ren just realizes what he's saying. That this isn't just some world, that it's not some video game, and he keeps telling them that this isn't a video game, this is real life. That back in his world, these things were crucial as well. He's fought monster after monster, curse after curse, that is crucial to this world, that if he died there, many would have died as well. And it's the same thing with this, with all their monsters, with dragons, with refugees, with anything. If you don't properly handle it, everything collapses. And he hopes that Ren and Itsuki will understand that, but maybe their short-minded and short ideas won't really work as well as he thinks. This leads to their party trying to get their class upgrades, but unfortunately the royal decree forbids it, especially because it's only the 3-hero church, and that the other 3 heroes are the only ones allowed to get class upgrades. Luckily, they do hear of some other things in terms of finding a place to go by the slave market merchant, but they're gonna have to do that after this wave. And when it begins, they immediately go to help Loot Village. They begin fending off Loot Village even easier than last time, far easier actually. And it seems like they've been doing this for a while. It seems that whoever's fighting the main boss, which are the other 3 heroes, obviously, are taking forever. They're not fighting them, nothing's happening. So he goes over with his party to check it out, leaving the other party to obviously handle things there. And when he arrives, he sees that they're arguing. And they're not even really trying to solve the problem. They're attacking this Dutchman that obviously isn't working, and they're not even thinking outside the box. And Naofumi chastises them for this, and he, for one, gets extremely mad. He gets mad, saying that they're not acting like proper heroes, and that they should be working together. He points something out to Raphtalia, and she was actually able to see this beforehand, and she reveals the hidden boss, a massive Soul Eater. Naofumi immediately tells them that this was obviously the reason why they weren't having an effect on this Dutchman of some sorts, but now can they take down the Soul Eater that's in front of them? The other 3 heroes actually try. They try to kill the Soul Eater, but they can't kill them. The Soul Eater doesn't die, and Naofumi just sighs, thinking that he's going to have to handle this himself. He takes out his bow staff and goes flying at the Soul Eater, more or less just jumping at it, but cracks it on the face and slams it into the ground. The Soul Eater gets up, flying back at Naofumi, trying to bite onto his bow staff, but when he bites down on the bow staff, it actually won't budge. The bow staff is actually extremely strong. During the bite though, Naofumi reaches the bow staff up to the top of the Soul Eater's mouth, slamming into the ground and pinning it to the ground. Backing up, leaving the bow staff into the more or less the boat, as Raphtalia and Philo and also Hina unleash all of their strength and all of their attacks at once. Raphtalia slicing into it, as well as Philo kicks it in the stomach, and Hina blasts the Soul Eater with a bunch of tipped arrows that seems to have some remnants of cursed energy. It seems that Hina actually has unlocked this to a certain extent and is infusing this energy that she necessarily doesn't even know how it works and is using it for her arrows. And Naofumi is pretty impressed and says that she needs to talk with her about that after they're done here. And he realizes that the rest of them are using this cursed energy. It's actually enhancing their strikes, kicks, anything. And he didn't realize it before because they're just remnants, but it's slowly but surely building up more and more. It went from very, very minuscule remnants to something that he can actually sense blatantly. So it's pretty impressive how much they've gained over this time. With the Soul Eater now dead though, they think that the wave is completely finished. That's until another Soul Eater appears. Naofumi rips his bow staff out of the Soul Eater's mouth and goes to strike this one as well, but thinks to himself that he's basically just going to kill this one off because that whole combo move wasn't really... I mean, it was useful, but he probably could have killed the Soul Eater himself. He goes to kill it, but that's until something else kills it before he could. It seems like another woman has entered the fray. A woman that has blasted the Soul Eater out of the sky, pinning it to the boat with some magical powers? He's not so sure. And it seems like she's wielding some war fans. Weapons that are very, very reminiscent of some woman in a kimono. Some woman that would fan herself like royalty. He looks at the woman and it's glass. A woman in a black kimono wielding two bladed war fans. The true enemy of this wave has just arrived. The Raven Invader Glass easily defeats the other three heroes' parties. They're trying to be cocky, trying to fight Glass on their own and easily get wiped away, but Naofumi and his party are the only ones that stand in front of her. She begins to more or less chastise the other three heroes, saying that, frankly, Naofumi is the only one that she cares about, the only one she wants to fight. And Naofumi kind of laughs at this.
You know, you are definitely my type of girl, especially one that can fight. This is gonna be interesting.
And Glass is confused to hear this, and she says, what does he mean by this?
Listen, if you, how do I put this? A woman that's tall and has a fat ass, that's my type.
The rest of his party facepalm and just shake their heads, and Glass is just in shock and awe to hear this, and their fight begins. And immediately Glass is on the back foot. Their unorthodox fight style, especially using the innate technique that he has, the boogie woogie, teleporting back and forth between different members of his team, Glass can't really keep up. And he even in the middle of battle explains how the technique works, and she's confused at why he would even do such a thing, but he explains that it won't matter, that it's just going to confuse her even more. He immediately throws his bow staff at her, in which she catches, and they continue fighting more and more, and she tries to take a swing using the bow staff, but immediately he claps once again, and he takes the place of his bow staff, landing a clean hit, and then clapping one more time, and switching places with Raftalia, and she slashes at Glass, and he grabs his bow staff, switching once again with Raftalia, landing a clean blow to her chest. Glass realizes that anything up close is going to be his domain, that Naofumi is going to outclass her in every step of the way if they try to fight up close, so she immediately backs up, immediately just acknowledges the distance and starts blasting at Naofumi. But luckily, him and his party are able to close that distance relatively well. They worked on this a lot, especially using Hina and her special arrows now, with obviously her cursed type of arrows, but also any arrows that she possibly could use in terms of like trick arrows would allow them to close the distance. And using the boogie woogie would be easily be a way for them to close that distance without any trouble at all. And right when Naofumi gets the chance, he uses Black Flash, which lands directly on one of her fans, and it creates this electricity, this black electricity that blows them both up, injuring them, actually both, a substantial amount, in which they're both down but slowly stand up. But Glass realizes that she's outnumbered, and frankly they're both injured, but it doesn't matter. She's outclassed here, especially with the coordination that they have. She says that it won't be that easy next time, and if she brings more people and if she evens the playing field, Naofumi will be the one on the ground, and on the ground forever. Naofumi kind of laughs at this and asks if that's a promise, and she shakes her head as she leaves. The wave sucks her back in, and Naofumi watches as Glass escapes. Raphtalia begins to question why he didn't just attack her once again, and it actually felt like he wasn't going all out. And Naofumi says that he was technically going all out, and she's asked what does he mean by that, and he just explains that yes, he could have expelled more power, but that also could have hurt him in various ways, especially with the fact that he's not fully comfortable with this world just quite yet. In his other world, for sure, he would have been able to use every bit of ounce of power that he had, but in this it's a little different. He's not so sure. He's questioning in terms of how strong should he actually use without obliterating his body, especially with the amount of power he's being enhanced with every single day. He says that he could, if he wanted to, wipe her out with a flick of his wrist, but that also might blow his wrist off. So is that truly worth it? And Raphtalia never even thought of it like this. That control does matter a lot. And he shakes his head, yes, that it definitely does matter, but that's something for them to talk about another time. And they all head away and head back to the kingdom, with the wave luckily defeated. The other heroes are practically knocked out cold, so Naofumi actually helps them back to the kingdom as well. But when he arrives, the king chastises Naofumi, demanding him to reveal the secrets behind his abilities, and he tells the king that for one, he's not going to demand anything, that he hasn't gotten much help from the king anyways, so why should he tell him anything? But if he even did, it's not like they would understand it. And the king is shocked to hear this and says that why is he questioning his intellect? And Naofumi says that it's not his intellect. I mean, he is pretty dumb, but that's not the case. It's that this power that he's using is from an entirely different world than the one they're living in currently. This is called cursed energy, an energy that you'll have no idea how it works. So he says that there's no reason that they're wasting his time and that they need to go. So he begins to leave, but the king says that if he doesn't tell him exactly how it works, he might not be able to torture him, but he'll torture his teammates. And once Naofumi hears this, he immediately appears in front of the king. I will send my hand so far through your chest. I don't care if you're royalty. I don't care who you are. I'll kill you. And it would be over. Just like that. How about it? Would you like to play that game? And this is the first time Naofumi has ever truly lost his cool entirely, especially with people that he cares about. He's not gonna just let this person, this king of some sort, talk like this. The king is shocked and completely shuts up, and Naofumi leaves. He tells his party that they need to handle things. They need to go to Shield Frieden, get their class upgrades, and they need to be ready for the next time Glass comes. And frankly, Naofumi needs to be ready, because Naofumi needs to learn how to control his power all together once again, and needs to make sure that he'll be ready to kill her if necessary. So they immediately head off, or at least try to head off, but Naofumi is actually stopped and pulled away by a shadow and given something. A church pendant? He's not so sure what it even means, but he thinks that it will most likely come to some fruition in the future, and he begins to ask the shadow something else, but the shadow's gone. So Naofumi's party departs to Shield Frieden for the class upgrades, but while en route, they actually are met by Melty, who wants Naofumi to reconcile with the king, but Naofumi says he's not going to do that. That sounds ridiculous, and Naofumi had to threaten him so that he wouldn't hurt his party. So if she really wants him to forgive someone that threatened the people that he really cares about, and also Melty cares about, then obviously we're gonna have a problem. And Melty says that that's not what she meant by it, that she just wanted, but as she says this, she's cut off. A blade is about to pierce Melty in the chest, right through her back, but immediately Naofumi grabs the blade and shatters it. It breaks in an instant, and he tosses Melty into the back of the carriage and stares down all of the knights. You have 5 seconds to leave. If you don't leave, I'll be sending all of you home in a body bag. And they all turn tail, immediately running away, and Naofumi walks over, telling them that they need to go now. They need to head to Schildfrieden and get out of here, and tells Philo to turn on the gas, that it's going to be a bumpy road, but they're going to have to go quick. So they begin taking off, immediately running, and Naofumi is questioned by Melty about what just happened, and he quickly explains that, well, it seems like the assassination of herself went astray, that it didn't go too well, but they'll be right on their tail once again, accusing Naofumi of kidnapping her. And Melty is so confused, and she says that she'll fix it, she'll fix the situation, but Naofumi disagrees. The guards already have turned. Whoever's trying to get her killed is probably in royalty as well, so you gotta be careful. So being with Naofumi is the best for the situation. And eventually they are cut off. They reach these mountains that are nearby Siltveld, and they're cut off by these guards. And they're caught by the other 3 heroes as well. And Melty tries to explain the situation, but Melty orders them to ignore her, claiming that Naofumi is somehow brainwashing her. Naofumi though immediately grabs Melty and tells them that they have to go. So they immediately just try to dash off, but Motoyasu latches something on to Philo. So Naofumi is forced to change his course of direction and tries to help Philo get away. He does just that, and he eventually is able to cut themselves off, and Ren and Itsuki finally come to their senses at what they're saying. And he throws something to Ren. Naofumi gives him the same pendant and tells him that he's smart. He'll figure it out, but they need to go. That these people aren't who they say they are, and Mine is trying to trick Motoyasu into something that she wants and that will benefit her only. So they head off, immediately leaving, but one of the shadows actually catches up with them and begins speaking with Naofumi, saying that the queen wants to speak with him. Naofumi said that that's truly no problem, and that it's kind of convenient because there's a royal decree blocking Siltveld, or the border of Siltveld, and he's not like he can go to Schildfrieden and get his class upgrades anyways. So this then leads them to a nobleman by the name of Van Richnot, who rules the area nearby, and by their surprise, they actually are just allowed in pretty easily. And he says that he actually knows Melty, knows the king, and frankly, he actually is kind of at bad terms with some of them, if not most of them, but he does like Melty a lot. Melty is a nice girl, and he says that they just need to relax, they can get some food, they can chill, whatever, they can stay here for the night, and Richnot is completely fine about it. That's until after the night is over, Richnot is arrested while the maids hide Naofumi and Raphtalia, and Naofumi feels horrible. He feels horrible about this, that now they're gone. Melty and Richnot got taken away because they were hiding here. So Raphtalia, Naofumi, Philo, and also Hina, they're all gonna go back and hunt down whoever took Richnot, get him back, and also get back Melty. They all sacrifice themselves more or less to make sure that they were able to be safe and not get in trouble, but they don't care. They want to save them and make sure everything turns out fine. When they head to this kingdom, when they arrive, it seems like there is a ton of demi-humans outside banging on the gates, telling them to give back Van Richnot, and Naofumi smirks to see this, saying that it seems like they're kind. Well, Raphtalia and Hina are very passionate, and they're actually shocked to hear this because this is the first time Naofumi has ever brought up their, race or their heritage or anything, and the fact that they're demi-humans. And they ask, why is he bringing it up now? And he just says that it relates to, how passionate they are. It's funny because they're just the same way. So they head in and they actually kind of blush to this idea, and they're pretty happy to hear the acknowledgement that Naofumi gives them. But when they arrive into the kingdom, Raphtalia begins getting flashbacks of her old village being destroyed, sees various Melremark troops enslaving them, and so much more. Death, everything. But back to present, after remembering her past, she obviously heads in with Naofumi and the rest of the party to hunt down Rabier, and when they find him, they beat him down, and Raphtalia has a blade above him. And Rabier insults all of them, saying that they're all just pieces of trash and that God will smite them one day, but then turns around to beg to Raphtalia that she doesn't kill him. And Naofumi looks at Raphtalia and nods, saying that it's her choice of what she wants to do, and that he's personally killed many things, many curses in fact, bad people. But is there a difference? A curse, someone that isn't technically a human, or a human that have the aspects of curses that are so evil in their ways? Do they deserve to live? Naofumi brings this idea up and says that that's only up to her definition of a person. Is he a person? As he says this to Raphtalia, she plunges the sword into his face, killing him. Sheathing the sword once again, and she says that he's not a person. He's a curse. And Naofumi is interested to see this, and he's not necessarily proud, he's not disappointed. He is happy though that she chose what she personally wanted and not what he would have done. So there is no Tyrannosaurus like dragon monster thing that comes out. Richnod is safe, and so is Melty, and Raphtalia got her vengeance upon the person that's been torturing her for so long, and she eventually finds Keel and luckily gets her completely out of there and gets everybody out of there. But even with all that said and done, it seems like Philo begins to sense something coming or calling to her. And Naofumi's confused to hear this, but Philo says that they should walk over to that lake. So that's what he does. And when they arrive, they begin hearing something, a soft voice talking, and a woman floats out of the lake. Philo remarks about how pretty she looks, and Naofumi says that she's not exactly his type, but he can see how she looks pretty. Philo, Raphtalia, and Hina slap him on the head, and he says, hey, like, what was that for? But that's who Fitoria is. The Filolio Queen has arrived, and she floats over to them in her human form, introducing herself, saying that she's Fitoria, and that she wants to take them somewhere so that they can speak. Arriving at the Filolio Sanctuary in a faraway ruins, Naofumi asks Fitoria about Philo's true nature and why she grew so much, and she explains that a hero, when raising a Filolio, that happens. It kind of turns her into some sort of hybrid Filolio queen, and that's what more or less Fitoria is. Well, in this case, she is the Filolio queen. And she actually asked Naofumi about the other countries, about why he's not protecting them as well, and he's baffled to hear this, not even knowing of it, and not even knowing of another country, and says that if he knew, he would have been trying to help. He had no idea. No one has even told him of this. And she's shocked to hear this, but he says that he'll try his absolute best to try and protect everybody. He'll do it. But Fitoria cuts him off, saying that that's not necessary, at least at this moment. Luckily, she's able to handle most of the things that are coming, at least for now. But this is going to come down to the other heroes being cooperative. She explains that normally the heroes are introduced into this world in a per country system, but this time Melremark brought all of them here, or at least brought them all to Melremark. So normally the other heroes would be sent to different places, but unluckily in this time, that's not what happened. Fitoria explains that they need to have all the heroes on the same page. Once they get all on the same page, once they all can work together, it won't really matter. they'll be able to eliminate mostly all of the waves, and then when they separate, they'll be strong enough to handle every wave on their own. So Naofumi agrees sort of to basically reconcile with the other heroes, but also explains to her that all the troubles he's gone through in the first place, that a lot of it isn't even his fault. But he does agree that they need to reconcile, they need to work together, and frankly he's been thinking that for a while, that it's not safe to go in as a one-man wrecking crew, or a one-party wrecking crew in fact. And Vittoria is happy that he's able to agree with her on this fact, and she also brings up something else. Brings up something that will actually benefit them a lot in the long run, and she basically explains something to him and that she needs him to go along with it. So the next morning, Vittoria takes Melty hostage, basically to coerce, quote-unquote, Naofumi to make up with the heroes, to test his convictions and stuff like that, and she ends up fighting Philo. Both limited to their human forms. While outmatched though, Philo is able to finally, after tons of struggling, break through Vittoria's magic, and she's satisfied. Vittoria names Philo as her successor, which grants her an insane amount of stat or base stat increases, and Vittoria force unlocks anything that she can in terms of Naofumi and his powers, in which is very little because honestly a lot of his powers have to do with his past world and all the curses and other things like that, but this does benefit him to a certain extent, giving him a slight speed buff based on the Filolial's speed in general. So Vittoria thanks them for all their cooperation and thanks them for all the help, and hopes to see them very soon again, and very soon again in terms of, well, being alive. She immediately sends Naofumi off with his party to meet up with the closest hero he possibly can, and that person is unfortunately Motoyasu. When he finds Motoyasu, they're at an outpost. He arrives at that outpost, and Motoyasu is refusing to listen, accusing Naofumi of killing Ren and Itsuki, but he doesn't get it. How would he kill Ren and Itsuki when he wasn't even near them? He hasn't seen them since they escaped their little attempt at recapturing Melty. That doesn't really make sense. And Motoyasu said he's not listening. A barrier then emerges around them, and their fight begins. But frankly, Motoyasu's party is outclassed. And it's not even close. Motoyasu's party is not a high enough level to really keep up in terms of a level gap. The techniques and the skills and the power, the raw power that his party has, Naofumi's party has, is far greater, even though they have a slightly lower level. And Naofumi is probably the same level with better powers than Motoyasu. So this is a very one-sided match, but that match is going to be cut short. Actually cut really short. And Philo begins to panic, saying that something is coming, something really, really strong, and she says that he's gonna have to try and break it. Naofumi's confused and begins to power up anything he possibly can. This blue aura revolves around him, and his cursed energy begins to overflow, and he asks her once again where it's gonna come from. She says it's gonna be right above them, that he needs to time it perfectly, that this is really dangerous. And the rest of them, Motoyasu's party, says that this must be a bluff, this can't be real, until this giant blast comes crashing down from the sky. Naofumi immediately grabs his bow staff, and then activating Black Flash, he clashes with the blast and begins to try and resist it. The rest of his party tries to help as well. Philo, Raftalia, Hina, they all blast the blast back together, and it's able to force it to explode in mid-air. But this does injure Naofumi slightly, and he's able to slowly get up with only minor injuries luckily. But this causes a huge crater on the ground, and they look up to see the Pope waiting for them with a weapon that is very reminiscent to the spear, the shield, the sword, and the bow. It seems to be this ultimate weapon that is combined from all of them, and Melty recognizes it, saying that that's the ancient weapon. It replicates all 4 of the cardinal weapons, and it's supposed to be gone to time. So Naofumi and Motoyasu are forced to work together and try to breach the defenses of the weapon. But unfortunately, they're not able to. Whatever's powering this weapon is making it even stronger than all the sword, the bow, and the spear. Way stronger than the ones that they have. And it's obviously explained by the Pope that they have an army to help. Naofumi continues to push his limits, clashing with the Pope, doing everything in his power to do so. And he even walks over to Moteyasu and says that he has an idea, but he's going to need to trust him fully. And Moteyasu is skeptical about this, and that's until Ren and Itsuki actually show up, blocking the next attack that the Pope shoots, and tells Naofumi that they both trust him. So Naofumi decides to use them as a way of dealing with this, and explains the plan. That with his party, he's able to basically teleport and switch spots every single time. They need to get him close enough to the Pope, or get this weapon close enough. And they all nod, and during this little planning phase, they are even mocked by the Pope as they begin to get surrounded by a cathedral. And Ren asks if this is going to hurt the plan, but he shakes his head no, it's not going to, trust him. So he basically enforces curse energy a little bit more into both of them, and they actually do feel this slight rush of power, and they're confused at how this even works. And Naofumi shrugs, saying that frankly this world is really weird, far different than his other one, and there's similarities but there's also differences, and he doesn't understand how everything works, but maybe they can figure it out sooner or later. But with that said, their fight begins. They begin teleporting back and forth or switching spots using the boogie woogie and just confusing the Pope. The Pope doesn't even know what to do. How am I supposed to hit them? I need to be able to shoot where they're going to be, but they're in different poses, different areas of the battlefield. The Pope is at a loss for words. Each one of these heroes have their own strengths, obviously their own weaknesses, but he needs to calculate those weaknesses and use them against him or against them. But when they're switching spots, he can't target one of them at once. It's super difficult. Eventually leading Naofumi to throw his bow staff in straight at him. But he switches the bow staff with Ren, and he immediately strikes at the Pope. The Pope doesn't even know how to react to this as the bow staff switches back with Ren. And Naofumi slightly smirks, knowing that his leveling system, all of these advanced techniques, has evolved his other techniques. So now he's able to even be more efficient with this technique. And they're able to actually get Naofumi close, very close to the Pope, and land a brutal gut punch right to him. And he spits up saliva and falls backwards. And Naofumi immediately capitalizes off of this and puts his bow staff right through the chest of the Pope. The Pope is still alive, hanging on for dear life, as everybody, all of his followers, start basically injecting all of this magical healing into him. But for some reason, the healing just stops. It abruptly stops, and the Pope is no longer healing from the flesh wound that is basically in his chest. He looks up and realizes that the cathedral is slowly but surely falling. The Queen has arrived with her army, and the Queen has just taken down the entirety of the people that are supporting the Pope. The battle is now won. The battle is now over. The Queen and her army help the other heroes and their parties out of the situation and bring them back to the castle. Naofumi finally gets to meet the Queen, and when he sees her, it's not what he expected. The first time he lays eyes on the Queen after recovering for a couple days, he's immediately astounded. A tall woman with a fat ass. Naofumi sees the Queen and gets down on one knee and says that it's a pleasure to meet her. As one of the heroes, he would love to take her hand. As he says this though, his party slaps him on the back of the head, telling him not to speak to the Queen like that. They know what he's going to say. The Queen slightly is baffled by this, but is kind of intrigued at the aspect of Naofumi, especially at the aspect of one of the heroes finding an interest in her. But she doesn't say that out loud. She thanks Naofumi for everything he's done, and also apologizes for all the hardships that were forced upon him. But he says that it's completely fine, that he was able to deal with it to a certain extent, and that the king and mine just need to be dealt with in whatever way she feels is best. And she nods and thanks him for being, well, so open-minded about this, and he says that it would be anything for a woman like her. And again, his party slaps him on the head, and she slightly laughs and blushes at the idea of Naofumi basically flirting with her. But with all the rest and all that over and done with, they have a small party, kind of like a banquet, to more or less eat and relax and all of the above. And the queen declares that the Three Heroes Church is abolished and everything in terms of that is done. And that now it's going to be the Four Heroes Church, but not with the shield, but with Naofumi, or whatever he wants to be called as the Curse Hero. The Curse Hero sounds a little scary, the queen says, and he says that she can call him whatever she likes. And she laughs at hearing this and says that the Curse Hero is just fine for her. So all that is said and done, and they finally have a nice time, then their nice banquet, but also they have a meeting for the Four Heroes Council. They begin speaking about everything they've learned throughout their journey, and Motoyasu is still reluctant, but luckily Ren and Itsuki aren't too far down the gutter like Motoyasu, so they're actually able to somewhat be beneficial in terms of talking about everything. So they speak about the ways they leveled and stuff like that. And Naofumi explains his entire thing about curses, and explains that in his world he fought curses, and he was and is technically a sorcerer. And the queen actually nods at this, saying that the sorcerer hero would sound pretty good, but Naofumi still likes the idea of the curse hero. It just sounds manlier. And she kind of laughs at this and nods, saying that they can keep it that way. That's fine with her. But he explains that the only reason why he's never really brought it up, other than the fact of this disconnect, was that frankly they wouldn't be able to use it as well. Cursed energy is something that you really need to be in depth with to begin using, and he's actually shocked that his party has been able to mildly use it. Nothing good, nothing intense at all, but very minorly use it, which is very, very impressive to Naofumi, especially because it took him years to get good at it on top of that. And they're shocked to hear this, and they say that they must all have their own special way of getting stronger, and he says yes. But Naofumi's a little different. He doesn't necessarily have a weapon, he has something in the side of his head, but he's actually able to use other weapons if he more or less inserts cursed energy within them, and that's why he uses a bow staff. They do question him about that, saying that the bow staff is extremely strong, and he says that he's been basically using it since the day they got here, or a couple days after they got here, so he's been training with it a lot, so it's very strong. And with all that information exchanged, they eventually do kind of have a backing out, because they do argue about what's the best way to train and stuff like that, in which Naofumi doesn't really care about. But it seems like the other heroes really do care about it, so he kind of just blows it off, telling the queen that maybe when she puts the children to bed, they can chat later, and he winks at her and walks away. The queen shakes her head and slightly smiles and laughs at the fact that Naofumi is so enticed, you can say, with her, but she's not totally against it. But even with that said, there's not enough time for all of that. Naofumi and his party, before heading to the Calmira archipelago, actually get their class upgrades. But when this happens, it seems kind of odd. The class upgrade didn't allow them to actually choose their pathway, and they assumed that maybe Fitoria had something to do with it, but it did give a bigger boost than any class upgrade would have given normally. So there is a give or take with that. But even with that said, it's still pretty beneficial, so they're not too mad about it. The next morning, Naofumi boards the ship headed to Calmira, but however, the other heroes took most of the ship's cabins, so Naofumi's party is forced to share a room with a pair of travelers by the name of Lark and Therese. They introduce themselves, obviously, and they both begin, or all of them begin to talk a little bit and talk about maybe training together in the future and leveling up at the archipelago. But there's no guarantee that's going to happen, especially because Naofumi wants to dive right into the deep end as soon as possible. So when they arrive, Naofumi immediately takes his party to XP grind. He wants to defeat and destroy as many of the highest level monsters they can possibly find, in which they find just that. They find multiple monsters that they're able to defeat relatively easily, but at extreme levels, and even getting upgrades for arrow tips and for Raftalia's blade and Philo's weapons as well. And they're able to actually handle a lot of things, defeating monster after monster and getting insane amounts of XP. At this point, Therese and Lark actually do join them, but when they see how strong Naofumi is, it is a cause for concern. And he can see it in their faces, but he wonders why. Why are they so concerned about his strength? And they're obviously not going to admit why they would look that way or feel that way. But so Naofumi decides that he's going to keep it in his pocket, at least for now. So they fight on more and more, leveling up, and after about a day or two of doing this, or maybe even 3 days, Naofumi decides that it's time for them to take a minor break. They're gonna relax on the beach, hang out, do whatever, and just chill. And during this time, Naofumi lays down basically on this hammock-like thing, and he begins to just look at the sky and look at the waves, and begins to think, imagine if the queen was here. Imagine the queen in a bikini? Wow, that would be... As he thinks this though, his party slaps him on the head, and he says, hey, that he didn't even say anything, but they said that they know what he's thinking. And he says that he wasn't thinking anything. But as they begin to say this, Philo dives into the water and begins to swim around and around until she finds something. She finds something actually kind of odd. It seems like this odd little temple, underwater sea temple thing, and she tells Naofumi about this, and he's curious. So they begin to go and investigate. And when they begin their investigation, they find that there's a dragon hourglass there, and it is linking to Kalmyra, and the next wave is in only 48 hours. Learning of the wave, Naofumi immediately goes to speak with the queen, and he limits his advances because he knows how important this information is. So he bites the bullet and begins explaining to the queen everything that's happening, and she says that she'll get a large naval fleet ready. So they all get settled. Naofumi gets his party ready to go for the next wave, and everybody gets ready for this wave, and they hop on the naval ships after 48 hours passes. They're out in the ocean and waiting for the creatures to show up, and the navy will fight the smaller creatures, and the 4 heroes will fight the boss monster. But the only thing is, they'll get a rude awakening very quickly. The other 3 heroes, not including Naofumi obviously, aren't able to hurt this boss monster. It's just like the Soul Eater. What is wrong with them? Have they not been training properly? What's going on? Why do they lack the strength to do anything? It seems to him, at least to Naofumi, that they don't have the actual means to kill a thing because of their mindset. It has to be. They haven't had the right mindset. They think that they're invincible, even though it's been proved that they're not. Ren and Itsuki are probably slightly stronger than Motoyasu, but even with that slightly stronger strength and slightly advantage, maybe in a better mindset, it doesn't matter. The fish and the giant monster still is not going to be killed. Naofumi goes to jump off the ship with his team to kill that monster, but before he even can though, Lark and Therese attack that monster, destroying it, immediately killing it, and stand on top of the dead giant fish, you could say. Naofumi meets them there and stands and stares at them with his bow staff out equipped, and Lark asks him why he's not putting that staff away. You really think I'm dumb? I know that you two were very suspicious.
I can tell by your auras you're one to fight. But I will say, Lark, I like your taste in women. Respect. Only if we could be brothers. Friends. We'd probably be best friends, buddy. But unfortunately, you're here to hurt us, and I'm here to hurt you. Naofumi immediately charges at Lark, and Lark is astounded by the speed. He knew that Naofumi was strong, but maybe with the wave opening up, he'll be able to close that distance. But it doesn't seem like that's the case. Therese is going to have to intervene immediately, attacking Naofumi with her gems, blasting him, but he's able to dodge slightly, and he flips Lark on his back, putting his bow staff right to his neck, telling him to yield. That whatever this case is and whatever's happening, they can try and figure it out. But this is different. They're not part of the waves technically, correct? And Lark smiles, kicking Naofumi off of him, and says that he's a smart dude. They're not part of the waves, not technically. Their home world. They need to save it. And if they want to save it, all 4 of these heroes need to die. Lark easily knocks away the other 3 heroes that are trying to intervene, and Therese keeps all the other naval fleets at bay, not wanting to kill them. They only need to kill the other heroes. Naofumi even remarks that Therese has a soft heart, a nice heart, and he feels that, well, you could say Lark has the same one. They don't want to come here to kill the 4 heroes. They know they have to if they want to save their world, but they want any other way to do so. They want any other way to save their world. Lark says that of course that's the case. No hero would want to kill somebody, or at least kill another hero for no reason. And Lark says that there is no other way, that they tried everything. But Naofumi says that they are part of another world. That means Naofumi is as well. That they can try something as well, that they can figure it out. But Lark shakes his head. There's nothing that you can figure out that we haven't already tried. Lark and Therese begin attacking Naofumi, and Therese is able to somewhat section off the rest of his party, but Philo is able to squeak through, kicking Therese slightly in the side, and this causes her to lose focus. Now, the rest of Naofumi's party, Hina and Raphtalia, get through with ease and are able to strike down Lark as well. But as they're fighting, Naofumi begins to question. If they're here, they're part of another world, does that mean that other woman? Is she? He looks up to see Glass blasting tons and tons of blasts at them, and it seems like they're unrelenting, unstoppable. Naofumi has to force himself to block each one and protect his teammates, and he takes a good beating. He's not dead, not too hurt by any means, but he did take a bit of a beating. Anybody that would have to basically block his teammates and take blasts himself would be hurting pretty badly. So he's hurting pretty bad, but luckily they're safe. Glass says that she wants to fight Naofumi on his own, and he kind of smirks, saying that she just couldn't get enough of this beautiful physique, huh? And she shakes her head and tells him to meet her on the other boat. So they meet on the other boat, and their battle begins, in which on one-on-one, it's not even, you could say, but Naofumi also doesn't want to kill her. Naofumi wants to somehow reconcile and figure something out. Maybe they can somehow save her world, and they begin striking each other down, and Naofumi is using his weapon. His bow staff is obviously able to parry most of the blasts that are going to come after him, and being that he doesn't have to worry about his other teammates, this is very, very doable. He knocks Glass down and puts the bow staff to her neck and tells her not to move. Look, we can figure this out. Seriously. I know your world is in danger, and I'm sure that means mine is as well. I mean, obviously with you all trying to kind of hunt the heroes down, it does make it a lot harder. But we can figure it out. We can just make sure everything goes everybody's way. We can save your world, save my world, save everyone's world. Glass says that that's just not possible. It doesn't make sense. It's too optimistic. They're going to lose too much. But then Naofumi begins to question. Where's the other hero? She says that she's not here.
she knows knows who he's talking about, and that yeah, there's other heroes in her world, but they didn't come, and that the hunting hero didn't come because she can't fight humans anyways, and she wouldn't have wanted this either. And Glass remarks hearing this, and Naofumi lets her go. This person you're speaking of, you have a good connection with them, correct? Glass nods, and she says that they have the best connection, that they're practically inseparable. And, well, Naofumi smiles and says that what she is saying, what that hunting hero, whatever her name is, Glass cuts him off, saying that her name is Kazune, and Kazune, I'm sure you want to protect her, and we can protect her. We can figure this out. Well, I can head over to your world, and we can solve whatever problem needs to be solved. I'm sure we can. And frankly, Glass is skeptical. And why wouldn't she be? It's hard to even figure out, but Glass does believe him to a certain extent. But maybe the problem wouldn't be just going directly to her world. She says that it might be a bigger problem than they're expecting, but they'll speak soon maybe. Naofumi smiles and says that at least they all get to survive one more time. How about it? Glass nods and says that they do. And maybe in the near future, well, maybe both of their worlds will be saved. Maybe any world out there will be. So Glass flies over or jumps over to Lark and Therese, and they all back down. You know, kiddo, you're really impressive. Frankly, you probably could have killed us three. Kinda lucked out the way you act. But, we appreciate it. I'm sure we do. I'm sure all of us do. And I'm sure everybody in our world does as well. We'll figure this out. All of us. And then we can save your world, we can save my world, and we can save any other world that needs to be saved. Lark smirks and calls him kiddo once again, and the wave pulls them away and they jump into it. And Naofumi stands there and smiles and thanks Raphtalia, Philo, and also Hina for not killing them. And they say that they had no plan of doing so anyways, that they obviously wanted to just persevere. They basically wanted to save their world. There's no reason to kill them necessarily, only if it actually became a threat. And Raphtalia says that Naofumi has taught them the line between threat and foe. Naofumi slightly begins to cry and says he also never had to teach them what type of guy they truly like, because it's really anything other than Motoyasu. They begin to slightly laugh, and so does Naofumi. And they basically just all head back, and the other three heroes do question a little bit why he didn't just finish them off, and he says that they could be useful in the future. Very useful. He goes back explaining the situation to the queen, and she's pretty impressed. Pretty impressed at all of what happened, giving Naofumi a slight kiss on the cheek, and Naofumi basically just rings with joy inside himself, and he doesn't, overly scream or anything, but he's definitely excited. A tall woman with a fat ass just kissed him on the cheek. Okay, I'm done with that. But Naofumi is happy that the other heroes from another world were able to survive, and maybe they can figure out a way to save their world, save his world, and save everybody else's world. But after that, everybody heads back to the kingdom. And as a reward, well, the queen wants to give something to Naofumi, and which Naofumi's head is just in the gutter, but she gives him something that's very important. It's more or less lordship over the village that Raphtalia once lived in. The village that was basically raided, ransacked, and now he has the chance to rebuild it. Now he has the chance to save the village that Raphtalia came from, and now they can finally be at peace, or at least to a certain extent. The waves are difficult, the waves are strong, and the waves are always going to be a threat no matter what. But if they don't keep their humanity and they don't take this seriously, then everything will fall apart quicker and faster than they can possibly imagine. He makes this apparent to the other heroes as well, and he begins to rebuild, using his lordship of the place, the old town or the old village that Raftalia was more or less raised in. Raftalia expresses this feeling, this love, this want to save everybody, and she's so happy. She's happy that her village is back, and now they have an actual home base. But she does bring up, and so does the rest of his party, the fact that once this is all over, Naofumi is going home. Naofumi nods, saying that he wants them to be strong enough that if any of this ever happens, ever again, that they can stop it themselves. And he apologizes, saying that he has people at home that need him too. That he fights wars more or less every single day, you could say. That he is needed back at home, and he doesn't even know what's happening over there. He hopes everyone's safe, but this is like another home for him too. He wants to make sure that all of them are safe as well. Even if that does mean he'll leave one day, it won't be now. He explains that living in the moment is something important, and that's what he learned back at his old home, and now he's going to enact that in this home. He basically explains to Raftalia to not get sad, and none of them should get sad. Not until he finally leaves, and then when all that sadness goes away, they could smile, knowing that this place, their home, is safer because of it. They all nod and agree and say that they'll work together to make sure that both of their homes are safe and sound and at peace before Naofumi leaves to make sure that his world is at peace as well. And that is a wrap for What If Naofumi was the legendary cursed hero. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, sub, comment down below, anything you can. I did all this in one day. I'll be honest, I had to go to the dentist the other day, so I didn't get to work on it, blah, 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 all that stuff. You guys don't really care about that, but that's why I've been kind of drawing on a really thin line in terms of recording. So I finally got this done, finished, so I hope y'all enjoyed, and I hope y'all, and if y'all want to see some JJK what ifs, let me know, because obviously that might come eventually. And yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.